Hello, it's Jocelyn here. This is going to be a video where I go into Logic Pro and break down the arrangement and a little bit of the production of Help Me Rhonda from the video I posted last week, the recreation of Help Me Rhonda. I'm hoping to put a link to that video here if I can figure out how to do that. So stay tuned for that. Just a couple of small announcements before we switch over to the Logic Pro session. Don't forget to visit my website, www.jocelyn.com, for additional information. Still kind of figuring out what my website is, so bear with me, but that's the place to go. We've got a few new videos in the works. I hope to have the recreation of Let Him Run Wild up pretty soon, hopefully a week or two tops. And then I'm trying to go chronologically in the order they were recorded rather than the track list on summer days. So that's the reasoning behind the order there. Otherwise, yeah, this is, I think, how I'm going to do it. I'll put out the recreation video, and then about a week later put out a video where I just kind of break down the production and the arrangement a little bit and see how that goes. I have not given up on 5-minute feel flows, feels to reels. Those will be coming up intermittently along with various other things. As always, please be in touch if you have any ideas, thoughts, suggestions. Appreciate that. If you're really enjoying yourself, it's cool to see my subscribers get close to 1,000. That would be an incredible milestone to hit, considering the esoteric nature of what I talk about. And if you really, really enjoy yourself, consider a donation to my cause. Basically, it costs a lot of money to buy, maintain, source, rent, whatever musical instruments to use for this kind of study. I've kind of given up everything to do this. That sounds a little more dramatic than it actually is, but I've put studying the Beach Boys above my own personal comfort, let's just put it that way. So if you feel like donating to, at the moment, my main concern is getting a bass saxophone for a bunch of upcoming productions. If you want to donate to the Bass Saxophone Fund, you can do that at jocelyn.com. There's a donation link there. Or if you have a bass saxophone and want to lend it to me, that would work too. Or if you know someone, that would be great. Trying to get that bass sax. All right, let's get over to the Logic session, and we are going to talk about how I put together my recreation of the single version of Help Me Rhonda. See you over there. Here we are in the session. I will try to keep things pithy and moving along, otherwise this could take hours. So just a quick word on how I set things up here. Some of these reconstructions I'm going to mix in sort of an enhanced original way where I follow the same bussing, and others I'm going to take more of a sort of fantasy remix approach. And I'll try to explain my reasoning behind that when those times come up. But for this, I pretty much followed the same bussing, sent the same things to the same tracks that they were sent to on the original session. And then the mono overdub stuff, then I feel a little more free to move around to create a little bit, newer sounding mix. Anyway, so I set it up so I more or less have my inputs lined up here, and the green here is supposed to symbolize the original inputs
the board at Western had 12 inputs, assuming the board at Radio Recorders was similar. And so if I need more than that, I'll think about ganging things up. So that's what I did here, and ganged the Honer and the organ together on their own input called keyboards. And the saxes, tenor 1, 2, tenor 1, 2, and 3, or tenor 1 and 2, and the bari sax are individual here, but then grouped together to be one input on the board. Where are they? Oh, horn bus. There it is, right there. Okay. So, and then the overdubs are here to the right of the inputs, and then there to the right of those I have my echo sends, which are similarly to how it would have been done at Western, automatically, quote unquote, automatically routed to the same primary program bus. So I have a left send and then the left channel. And then I have a loop for tape slap, and then another one that sort of simulates a room sound, and we'll hear all that stuff. So if you have any questions about how I've laid this out, let me know. But let's start by listening to some things. So the production is really driven from the beginning by the basses and the piano playing the bass line. Let's see. So those three instruments play almost exactly the same thing throughout the piece. And I think that I've gotten everything correct there. Most covers and the Beach Boys and Brian's bands don't play it exactly as it was written, which I think I have. Now, interestingly enough, there's this story about how Brian made them keep playing, and Carol Kay got so fed up with it, and her hand was so tired that she gave Brian the middle finger on the way out. And I kind of see where she's coming from. It's not an easy bass line for an electric bass, and it is kind of tiring in general for the bass players. So by the time the solos come around, the walking bass line gets simplified into a sort of just root of the chord quarter note thing, which could just be because it was too tiring to go on, and Brian accommodated that. I tuned my string bass down a half step so I could have more open strings and make that a little easier on myself. Here's what the basses sound like without the piano. Here's just the Fender. And here's just the string bass. Alright, so those are the bass sounds, and that sort of looping arpeggio is really the bed for the track. Now, let's talk a little bit about the percussion. This tambourine just goes through the entire thing. and is joined by drums. Now, there are several effects on those, most prominent of which is this tape echo. And the tape echo is, not something that you'd really put on drums these days. But Brian liked to do it, and he put tape echo on tambourine as well. And all it does is kind of adds a little more substance to the hits. It's not enough that it's like a real repeating effect. It's sort of like, if you think of it serving the same purpose sonically as reverb, I think that's sort of the idea. Yeah, so I've got the drums would have been mic'd up with a single overhead. Sounds like this. And then there's a kick drum mic, which the more I study this stuff, the more I feel like that kick drum mic probably was not used or was very low in the mix, because in a room like Western or Radio Recorders or Sunset Sound or Gold Star, that kick drum's going to be in every mic anyway. So the only reason you'd need to bring that kick drum mic up is if you really wanted to get a good attack of the strike of the kick drum. And sometimes you do want to emphasize that, but other times when you want a little more of a boom, it's just not necessary. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the guitars and ukuleles. Now, if the bedrock of the song is the bass line, if that's the bedrock, then the sort of house that's built on top of it has got to be these 12-string guitar licks. Oops, Billy. So we have two guitars playing that lick in the beginning. Billy Strange likely played it on the basic track. And then Carl overdubbed an additional layer of that. With a much brighter tone. Now at the end of the piece, Carl overdubs the riff and they mute Billy's guitar because he was kind of struggling. And an interesting theory about that is that he'd had a hand injury around this time and needed to kind of take a break from playing guitar. And this was one of his last gigs on guitar for Brian, if not the last, before you see him move into his role as a tambourinist. Yeah, so that's the, that riff is kind of the primary hook of the song. The song is really hook rich, isn't it? You have so many catchy elements, it's almost embarrassing. Okay, so Billy's guitar then serves more of a role during the rest of the song. Where are you, Billy? set background line. Okay, so that's going on through the whole thing, and then when the verse kind of picks up, Glenn Campbell, or pretty sure it's Glenn Campbell. This is one of the few Beach Boys sessions where there's no contract on the date, so we have to make educated guesses on who was playing. And it's very likely this was Glenn on this little ska guitar you're going to hear. Now, another question about this song is, because we don't have the contract, are there one ukulele? Is there one ukulele, or are there two ukuleles? The only thing we can really glean from the session tape is there's definitely Barney Kessel playing one ukulele. We have a personal remembrance from Carol Kay that Howie Roberts, the great jazz guitarist Howard Roberts, was playing ukulele. Also, I personally hear two ukuleles, but not everybody that I trust does. So I lay down two ukuleles. But if there's only one, hopefully getting to hear the isolated tape, the isolated multi-track tape could help that, but otherwise this is the best I can do at the moment. And here's how two ukuleles sound together. You can hear that there's a little tape slap on those. Here's guitars with them. And if we just cut to one ukulele, it's not a huge difference. Just adds a little bit. So between Billy Strange playing the lick and Glenn playing the upbeat sort of ska rhythm and the really bouncy ukulele rhythm, that's what gives the track its bounciness over that great swinging bass line. Okay, let's talk about the saxes. Three of them. Two tenors and a bari. And we're just starting to get into the territory where Brian was having more and more fun writing for wind instruments. This is still a fairly straightforward rock and roll kind of arrangement. But there's some cool stuff, so let's listen to those in isolation. Oh, and I should say before I start, I am in no way as good a saxophonist as Steve Douglas, nor Jay Migliori, nor Blas Johnson. And it's slightly embarrassing to play this without the protection of the rest of the track, because you'll hear that my saxophone playing isn't as crisp as I'd like it to be, but you get the idea, and that's the important thing. So they play this kind of rock and roll rhythmic figure. The little movement. Don't need to. Well, where'd you go? There you are. Now, here's an interesting point. The baritone sax here has to drop out because it can't go low enough to play in unison with the tenors. I've got that soloed. Here we go. Now, very shortly after this, Brian would discover the bass saxophone, which, had he known about at this point, probably would have asked to play on this so it could double the tenor line. Rather than having to drop out and play only part of the line. See how funny that sounds? And here it is all together again. All right, and then this great line following the guitar. Now see how that top tenor doubles Billy Strange's 12 string? Here's the solo section. Yeah, so like I mentioned before, this is when the piano, bass, and the Fender and the acoustic are down to just plodding along quarter notes. So whether that was a compositional choice or Brian throwing the bass players a bone to save their hands, I'm not sure, but the complexity is gone by the end. All right, let's get into the keyboards. Now, the keyboards have been one of the hardest things to figure out in all of my time of doing this. And part of it comes from sort of cryptic message on the tape box that mentions specifically Hohner and electric piano as separate entries. Now, I don't think that there's two electric pianos. There's definitely one electric piano, but the other electric keyboard has to be some kind of organ, and that's really where the mystery lies for me. So if you think you can figure this out better than I did, please let me know. What I ended up doing is using a Vox Continental model, and the reason you need a 2 manual keyboard, and I believe that this was probably Larry Knechtel playing this organ part, because he liked to do split manual work where you play the same pitches alternating on each manual with alternating hands with very slightly different stops, which gives a different effect than if you're just hammering eighth notes. So by itself, this is what the organ sounds like. Now, by itself, to me, that sounds a little too transistory, and it's very possible that it was a Hammond, but I couldn't get it to sound right on a Hammond. When you add in the electric piano, which by itself sounds like this, you start to get there. Here's them both together. Here's just the organ. Now, do you hear the little alternating? That's just by moving one finger on one of the hands. I should probably demonstrate it visually sometime. So, yeah, if you have good ears and you listen to the organ from the original Beach Boys record, you'll find that I didn't quite get it. I really got as close as I could without driving myself completely insane. And again, if you have any ideas, please let me know. It's possible that Don Randy, who's probably playing the acoustic piano, played the electric piano part with his right hand while playing the bass line with his left hand, which would not be impossible. Where are you, piano? I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. All right, so let's get to just a couple more little bits, some overdubs. So we've talked about Carl's riff in the beginning. There's also this guitar slide up. And it comes back later. All right, and then during the choruses, there's an overdubbed organ, just a pretty straightforward Hammond sound that something like that. Hammond organ sounds are hard to dial in. If any of you out there consider yourself Hammond organ registration experts, please be in touch. I have so much to talk about with you. Oh, okay, so the piano solo and the guitar solo. The piano, I accidentally deleted the original recording that you heard on the recreation. So I quickly whipped this up. It's not the same thing. It's a VST. I'll let you hear it. There's that. And the guitar solo is here. The guitar solo, people have said that it's Carl's 12-string, but I don't think it's 12-string because when you bend notes on a 12-string, you get this pretty prominent chorusing effect when the two strings go slightly out of tune from each other. And I don't hear that on this, so I think it's just a 6-string, and here's what it sounds like by itself. There it is. That is... Oh, let me just briefly talk about the room sound. This is something that I do to try to give the illusion of something like the drums and other instruments that would be leaking around into the room, just to give it a little more space, because I don't have a beautiful sounding room like a Hollywood studio. So this is my sort of fake room sound. The echo sends sound like this. That's three different echoes for the different tracks. I tend to use Sunset Sound, but also I like the the chamber stuff from East West, because that's Western's chambers sampled. And then for the 3 different buses, this is how Brian and the engineer grouped the instruments to 3 different tracks at the time, and I've kept those here. This is the left bus. So that's kind of the rhythmic interest bus. The right bus is kind of devoted to the ukes and tambourine. And the center bus is horns and organ and the guitar. And this is where, if I was able to hear the equivalent, the real thing of these isolated, I might be able to tell if this is 1 ukulele or 2. There's a lot of details that you can only get when you are able to increase the isolation. So that's one thing that I'm hoping to do over the course of my research. Is there anything else to talk about? Oh, you know what would be fun? Other tracks will be more interesting in this regard, but just for fun, I want to play for you what a Brian Wilson track would sound like with no reverb. It's not quite as dramatic here as it might be on God Only Knows or something. Here's with reverb back. Different combinations. Alright, I think that's what I have to say about all this. If I missed anything you'd like clarified, any thoughts about the organ sound, any thoughts about anything that I neglected to put into this production that I should have, please let me know. I am devoted to getting this all as correct as possible, so when we study this stuff, our baseline is accurate. And that's really important to me. Thank you very much for watching. Next up will be Let 'Em Run Wild, I think. Probably be a few weeks on that. But in the meantime, be in touch. Let me know what you think. And I will see you then. Thank you. Bye.